All right, Josh Smith here, live at my studio, Flat 5, and I'm talking to someone just down the road, but he hails from New Orleans, Louisiana. He's one of my favorite guitar players. I think the first time I actually saw him play in person was with Neville Brothers. I was probably pretty young. He plays with all sorts of guys. Dr. John, he played with Willie Nelson. He toured with the Neville Brothers. Plays with Hall & Oates. You've probably seen him on TV from Live from Daryl's House. He's just a great, great guitar player. Has a killer solo record you need to listen to. And I just love the way he plays. And it's kind of one of those anomalies where I've had friends in common with this guy and been listening to him play most of my life, and we never actually met or played. So hoping to rectify that. But everybody, please welcome Shane Theriot.
Hey Josh, what's up, man?
Hey, man.
Well, you saw me play with the Neville Brothers when you were really young, so you dated me.
Yeah,
When
it
was
was
that?
probably on one of those BB King tours. Do you remember
Oh
doing one of
yeah,
those?
yeah. We did I think two of those we did with BB.
Yeah. Then
Yeah, man,
yes,
that was
that's
when I
definitely where I saw you first. Yeah.
yeah, man. Wow, that was fun. Yeah, we were on the road with BB and I forget. Oh, one year it was BB and Storyville and shit, I don't remember, but yeah, we like 3 months. I got to hear BB play every night. It's killer. Yeah.
Yeah, I can relate a little bit to that feeling. I opened up for him a couple years in a row every time he would come to Florida for a run, and I was really young. And man, it was such like an inspirational. I learned so much in those weeks. It was like just magical stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. What a legend, man. Nice
Yeah,
cat too.
man. Well, dude, thank you for being here and doing this. Also, did I pronounce your name correctly? Because being a Smith, I never have to worry about it. So I always
I
want to make
missed it.
sure I
What did
got
you
it right.
say? I missed it. Did you say
Terrio,
Terrio?
right?
Yeah, it's Terrio. I've heard, I was joking with somebody yesterday. They were like, Shane, there, did I pronounce that right? There, it's always Terrio, but it's
Yeah.
Terrio. Yeah, it's
All
it's
right, good. I got it right.
Cajun French from way back, provincial French. You know, the H is silent. But people, I mean, if I had a dime for a quarter for every time somebody's like, "Man, the riot! Wow, you should do something with that." Either
Yeah,
that
you
or
should do something.
Shane, come back, Shane.
You're the
Yeah,
first. Every time do you probably say, "Yeah, you're the first guy that thought of that. That's amazing. I'm gonna write that down." Yeah.
yeah, right. Yeah,
Oh
but
man. Well, I've been starting all these by asking everybody a little bit about how the guitar ended up in their hands the first time. I'm really interested in that because I don't come from a musical family. It was really a random thing. My dad bought this guitar, I guess, because maybe he wanted a musician in the family, and it just ended up in my hands. I didn't have anybody around me playing. How did it work for you? How did the guitar end up in your hands first?
it was a combination of two things, sort of at the same time. Um, I kind of grew up in the, was playing in before I was playing, let's see, early 80s, I guess it would have been. I saw a movie about the Beatles. I mean, the Beatles were already sort of old. I mean, my mom had Beatles records, but so it was unusual for a 10-year-old to be into the Beatles, I guess, at that point. But it really inspired me to want to play guitar. So I remember telling my parents, "Yeah, I want a guitar for Christmas." And around that same time, one of my best friends that I grew up with, he was in a band and he played drums. And drums were my first instrument along with trumpet, but they already had a drummer. My friend was playing drums, so he's like, "Well, you should play guitar." And my uncle played guitar, and I always thought I had the cool uncle that he would come after school, he would show up and show me, ZZ Top things or Stairway to Heaven, or he was like a 70s folk kind of guy, but he could play some rock stuff. So he showed me all the bread, all that kind of stuff. And so all those things sort of happened at the same time. And I just got bit by the bug, man, as you know, and never turned back.
Yeah, and I'm assuming you probably, once we get bit, we all do. We get obsessive and we progress. At least most of us pretty quickly because of how much time we put into it. What about like being in New Orleans like that? You said you played trumpet. It's just a prerequisite, right? That if you go to school in New Orleans, you're going to play a horn of some sort.
Yeah, well, I went to school outside of New Orleans. I mean, I
Oh,
wasn't
okay.
influenced by any kind of Dixieland stuff at all. I mean, if anything, I heard more. I heard like Meters things. My mom had gotten me a Meters record when I was a little kid. They all asked for you. You know, went on
Yeah,
down to
yeah.
that thing. It was sort of like a regional hit, you know. But on the flip side was a tune called "Running Fast," and I was always just enamored by what now I know is, you know, Leo Nocentelli playing to a phase shifter. But back then I didn't know. It was just the flip side of They All Ask for You. Probably
Mhm.
most people didn't even listen to it that bought the record for that single.
Right.
And so those things sort of inspired me more, regional things like that. You know, get on the school bus during Mardi Gras season, you'd hear, you know, Carnival Time, you know, you'd hear New Suit, things like that. And I never, I mean, I guess it was sort of a subliminal kind of thing, osmosis. My dad really loved Cajun music, traditional Cajun music. So he would take me to music festivals in Lafayette, um, you know, about 2 hours from where we were from. And I just soaked up a lot of that stuff. And later on, I got to really appreciate it. So, but,
Did,
you know, I don't know, it's a long winded response, but I guess what you were saying is, yeah, it's trumpet is sort of it is a horn town, New Orleans, you know, but I think it's not as much of a guitar town as drums, drumming, horns, and maybe keyboard playing, you know.
yeah, yeah. And did you take? I mean, I'm assuming you had some music in school, probably. Did you take any guitar lessons from anybody, or was it all kind of on your
No,
own?
at first it was just my uncle, and he showed me, you know, the chords and bar chords, and he was very patient. He'd come over after school, show me a lot of stuff, and then I start to, like you said, you progress quickly. And then when I was around 15, my a friend of mine was taking lessons from the local hotshot excuse me guy, and he showed him how to. I know how to do what Eddie Van Halen does, man, because we were trying to. I couldn't figure it out, you know, and he showed me the whole tap, you know, and I was like, it was just like probably what Edison felt when he saw the light bulb come on at the first time. You know, I was like, so I was taking lessons sort of vicariously through him, you know, a few, and then we moved away. We moved out of South Louisiana when I was 16 or 17, and I finished my half of junior year and senior year in South Carolina. And anyway, they had a really great school there. So I got into the jazz band program there. I took a few private classical lessons. I was playing with the college jazz band. So that's where my lesson kind of thing came in. I never really took private lessons per
Hmm.
se. I didn't have like one teacher until I got to GIT. You know, I had a teacher there, but
Yeah, sure. So, okay, so you moved to South Carolina then for high school. Were you I mean, it sounded like you had a band with friends in Louisiana. Same thing in South Carolina. Did
yep,
you have guys your age that you were
yep.
playing with and having fun with and
Right
stuff like
away, I got into the great, you know, the best band, and it was really cool. It was a good way for me. You know, guitar has always been one of those things. Like I never was really great in sports. I never had much interest in it. I ran track for a minute, but um, music was always a bonding thing for me. So it was always easy to make friends that way. So moving to a completely different school, a different culture, completely different, and you're like 17 years old or whatever it was, 16. The guitar was like it just instantly helped me, you know, just fit in. You know,
that?
it was so yeah, I was lucky to have that, and I did meet some great guys and play a lot of great music there.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Do you remember any time what your first paying gig was around those times?
Oh, I remember my first paying gig. I was 11 years old, and we played a gig called the Sauce Piquant Festival in Raceland, Louisiana, and it was a church festival. I mean, but in South Louisiana, church, it's not like, you know, it's pretty wild. They were pretty crazy festivals. I think they stopped having a festival because of gambling or something. But sauce piquant in French, and it literally just translates to spicy sauce, and it's a Cajun dish they make with red gravy, you know. But there was school festival every year and it was school church festival, and they'd raise money, and we played. And yeah, I was 11, about to turn 12, and that was my first paying gig. But
Wow.
it
Nice.
was so it
Yeah,
goes
and that,
back a ways, Josh.
well, and that, but it hooks you. That hooks you so fast. It's like when it, not only when you start learning and growing and playing with other people, but then when you get paid, even if it's $20 and someone shoves it in your pocket at the end of a gig, it's like I'll do this for the rest of my life. Like that's it. I'm sold. That
Oh
feeling.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I remember going home with $75, and being like 13, 14. I'm like, why am I going to cut grass like, you know, Billy down
Dude,
the street? I mean, in this hot sun, why would I do that? I'll just play, 3 sets.
at 13, I played every Friday and Saturday, $75 each day, 4 sets each day. And that's how I bought my first Strat, my first Fender Pro Reverb. Like, I would just shove it in an envelope and then go buy a guitar, Like, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Amazing. Man, so okay, so when you're getting ready to finish high school, I'm assuming by this time your parents know you're a lost cause. Like this is what you're going to do with your life and that's all
Mhm.
there is to it. So, how do you end up deciding to go to GIT and not just get right out, playing gigs more or, what's the decision process there?
Like I mentioned before, I was playing in this college band, the jazz band. So after high school, I would go to the college band and play with them. And so I knew one of the professors there, and I took a couple classical lessons from another professor there. So they kind of hooked me up with a scholarship. And but I didn't want to live there. I didn't want to stay. I had no intention. I mean, I knew right away. I was like, well, I'm going to go to Hollywood. And so I saved my money, and I just went. I remember that. I remember my mom and dad being like, "What? You're going to turn down this college scholarship?" And I thought, I can always do it, but I want to go. And I remember the feeling of just, it was just an empowering feeling of, this is what I need to do. My thing has always been, man, if I want to learn something, I want to learn from guys that are like doing it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to learn, and it's not a slam on anybody, but like, I don't want to learn from somebody that learned from a book, from somebody else teaching, or like,
Yeah, yeah.
I want to go to LA and like study with, at the time, my Scott Henderson was a huge influence, and I later got to know him well, and he was at the school, and other people like on his level, like these guys are out in the trenches. That's
Yeah.
what I wanted to do. So that's why I made that decision. It was one of the best years of my life, really. At that time, it was such a great time to be a guitar player. I mean, guitar was a popular instrument. The school was really happening, and meeting people from all over the world that were on your level or even above or whatever. It was just,
Yeah.
wow, what a great time.
What year was that?
That was about 90 or 91. I'm losing track now, something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so guitar was, ruling the roost at that time. You had,
absolutely.
shrapnel and guitar for the practicing musician, and everything was guitar, guitar, guitar. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. I mean, also people don't realize GIT then was not like as fancy and nice as MI is now. It was like Hollywood was still kind of rough, and GIT especially. But man, the teachers were crazy. Like, did you have any Joe Diorio time or anything like that back then?
I didn't have a great experience with Joe Diorio, and I think he was like in a bad mood one day or something. And I asked him I showed up with this chord diagram that Scott Henderson had given me, and it was just like all these, minor seven kind of variations or whatever.
Uh,
And I asked Joe Diorio. First of all, I was so intimidated, and I asked him, could you give me some voicings or whatever? And he goes, let me see the paper. And then he looked at the paper Scott had given me, because there were some blank spaces on it that he was going to write in. And he goes, where did you get these voicings? And I said, oh, Scott gave them to me. And he goes, those are my voices. Like, you know, and sometimes he would just shut the shade on his room. Like we would try to get in, he would just close the shade. But I don't know. That was so Joe DiOrio. What a badass though. But you know, I was so young and like I was 18, man. I was so just scared, you know. Um, Joe DiOrio. So those are my Joe DiOrio stories. I
Right.
have a good Howard Roberts story though.
Oh, really?
Howard Roberts, as you know, Josh probably, but maybe your listeners don't. He was like one of the LA elite session guys.
Oh,
I
yeah.
believe he played you know
Yeah.
amongst other things. He was one of the cats, but he was also just a brilliant burning jazz player. I mean, check out some of his older records. Howard Roberts is a funky guitar player and all that stuff. Just amazing chops for back then, man. Late 50s, early 60s. And so anyway, Howard had this book. Well, no, let me think of this other story. They would announce that Howard Roberts was going to come to the school and do a seminar. Howard Roberts today, Thursday, because he didn't live in LA anymore. So
Hmm.
everybody would line up. All the really hip cats would line up to see him. Never show up. It happened like 3 times. It was like, you know, no, he never showed up. So like the 4th time, like a few months later, said Howard Roberts will be here today, room 110, seminar, blah blah blah. And it's like 4 guys are there now because he's already cried wolf so many times. Like,
Right.
but he showed up, and he showed up. He had the sunglasses, the little hat sideways with his case, hard shell case. And I remember he just said, "What do you guys want to do today?" Blah, blah, blah. And he's like, "Okay, I'm going to teach you what some guys learn in 3 years of regular college. I'm going to show you how to reharmonize a tune by writing backwards, starting from the melody note, the last note, and working your way back up using strong root resolutions, fourths and fifths." And he made this little kind of mock slide rule on the chalkboard, and he showed us strong root resolutions, 3 or 4 things like a fifth, fourth, whatever. And then
Hmm.
we took a jazz standard, and he showed it like, say the last note was a C. We just wrote backwards, and we used the root movements, and then we filled in the harmony after, and it sounded like you were some genius, And he showed us this in like 2 hours. He was an
Yeah.
amazing educator, man.
That's cool.
So I wish I could have got to spend more time with him, but that's what I mean. That school was just, at that time, I'm sure it still is. I mean, I still keep in touch with a lot of the teachers there. But
Yeah.
it was a game changer, man, for me.
That's so cool, man. I was just watching Howard Roberts literally yesterday at the Area Pro era when he had that Area Pro guitar with his name on the 12th fret after the Gibson stuff, or maybe it was before the Fusion Gibson, but between the big hole Gibson with the pickup, and then before the Fusion. I think he played the Area Pro for a while. It was
Yeah,
a
I remember that.
burning
Yeah, I
video.
have a early 70s Gibson Howard Roberts with the oval
Yeah.
and one floating pickup, and I was playing it one day, and Dr. John saw me playing. He's like, "Where you get that guitar? That's a Howard Roberts." I said, "Mac, you know how Robbie was?" "I used to work with Howard all the time," and he did. They were on Wrecking Crew sessions together.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
It's
So
an interesting guitar too. Like nothing sounds like that guitar.
no, that's true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really weird. So I'm assuming when you're out here, did you do any gigging when you were out here at GIT?
Man, I first time I came out here this year. Let's see, it was like March 5th or something. I landed, and Joel Taylor, drummer Joel Taylor,
Of course, yeah.
he calls me and he says, "Hey man, are you in town?" I said, "Dude, I just literally just landed, picked up my suitcase," and he said, "Yeah, I think Scott Anderson bailed on me on this gig, this little jam thing he does in Patsy. He goes, 'Can you come do the gig tomorrow night?' I said, 'Sure.' So that was fun. Did that. Went to Baked Potato with this drummer to hear this killer band back in March, and the next day everything shut down.
Yeah.
So that's how it's been. But
Yeah.
it's
Oh,
and I've been in and out a few times, but it's kind of a ghost town around here, which is it's kind of cool because everybody is in town.
everybody is in town and nobody wants to come over.
Yeah, I
Ever.
mean, we could be anywhere, man, doing
We
this,
could
you
be
know.
anywhere. Dude, so when you finished GIT, what was the plan there that you had in mind? Was it stay out here and start working as a guitar player? Was it move back to South Carolina or Louisiana? What was the next move?
It's funny, man. Nobody's ever asked me any of this stuff. Let me think back. I had no money. I was 20 years old. I had a girlfriend I just broke up with that, put me in a terrible frame of mind out here. I remember that. So I kind of wanted to get out of here, actually. And there was another teacher at the school that had opened up a sister school. It was GIT Atlanta, later became Atlanta Institute of Music. And Scott Henderson got me a gig. He recommended me for a gig. So I got the teaching gig. That's what I did. I thought, well, okay, this will be a stepping stone. It'll be good. I can make a little bit of money and get out of LA for a minute and then figure out what I want to do. And back in the South, I guess. And so I get to Atlanta, and Jimmy Herring was one of the teachers, and it was
Huh.
very small. It was completely different, but it was cool. And I stayed there 2 years.
Okay.
That's how that worked out.
That's cool. And so then when does, going on the road as a sideman really start to become a thing then?
Well, one day I was teaching at the school, and I never forget. One of my students came up to me and he goes, "Hey, man, like, why aren't you out gigging? Like, you're a great player. Like, why are you here teaching? You're 20 years old or 21." Like, and I started thinking about it. And meantime, I had a friend of mine who had moved to Nashville, and he was making more money than me gigging on weekends. And I just clicked. I was like, you know what? I got to get out of here. I don't want to teach. So I left and just went to Nashville. And that's how the sideman thing kind of came about. I mean, my goal, man, even when I was 15 was um, always, it was to be a working guitar player. It was,
Mm,
I never wanted to be, I mean, I did, we all wanted to be, rock star or whatever back then, but early on, I liked playing different styles, and I was pretty proficient in different styles. I worked hard on a lot of things and reading and stuff. So I thought I want to be a working cat, and it wasn't going to happen staying in Atlanta. So that's
right.
how that happened. Let me move this camera a little bit. Yeah.
It's amazing how, once you start touring, it becomes like you can snap your fingers and like 30 years go by. You go from tour to tour and session to session, and maybe you move here, you buy a house, you do this, and next thing you know, it's like you've spent 30 years. I've kind of got 10 years into that journey before I kind of decided again to doing my own thing more, which is what I'm doing now. But it's like, I mean, it's a weird feeling like being a sideman guy and knowing how cyclical it is. You've done it now a long time. Do you ever get burnt out on it?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I mean, it's such an overused word nowadays. Like, but I consider myself blessed, first of all,
Sure.
um, to have had great gigs. Like, I haven't had to do a lot of shitty gigs. I mean, I've done them, but not touring. I've never done any crappy touring gigs because I won't do it, and I'd rather just not do it.
Right.
Um, but do I get burnout? Yeah, sure, absolutely. Lots of times, man, I've played with somebody, and not my current gig. I mean, that's cool, but there's a lot of times where you're always thinking. I mean, like yourself, you said you've spent the last 10 years doing your own thing. Well, I think any guy that has something to say on the instrument, I mean, you in the back of your mind, you're thinking, but it's a hard thing, man. It's like, because you know how it is, we probably have a lot of the same musician friends, and people are like, well, things are tough. How did so and so get that gig? I'd love to have that gig, blah blah blah. And it's like
Of
this
course.
little click, and then you don't want to let go of certain things, or and like you said, 10 years go by like boom, like nothing.
Well, yeah. I mean, when I started, I thought, well, I'll never do anything but my own music. I'm me, and I'm a blues guitar player, and this is what I do. And then when I made the decision to stop doing that and move to LA because I wanted to be more of a working guitar player, try to be an adult with a family, make a living. Okay, now I'm all in on that. I'm going to be a sideman and do sessions, and that was great. Like I had, 12 years here of that was all I did basically, and I had some really fun gigs, good music. I did a lot of sessions and I made a living. We bought our house, all that type of stuff. And then somehow it flipped back around and now I'm back the other way. Like I'm never going back on the road again as a sideman for anybody ever again. Like I only go on the road if it's for my own thing or blah 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 blah. And it was because I started to see while I was in the midst of the touring thing, it would be like, man, you'd have that year that's just killing, and then you'd have that year that was just sucked, and then you'd have that year that was killing, and you'd have that year that was just okay. And it was like, it was so up and down while still being incredibly rewarding and fun, and you're playing music for a living. I'm not complaining about it, but it was like, man, I did feel like 40 years could go by, and then I'll definitely have lost any chance of doing my own thing. And where will I be at the end of that 40 years besides? I don't know. I don't know if I would have liked where I ended up, basically.
Yeah. Well, there's one gig I won't mention, but it's a pretty big singer that I had this jam band for a while called the Grease Factor, which was named after my second solo record.
Right.
And I had a guy that was interested in, promoting us. He kind of managed us and stuff. And so anyway, we put this band together with Jeff Sipe from Aquarium Rescue Unit, Johnny Neal from Government Mule, like Allman Brother. It was like a
Yeah.
star band. And it was right when the jam band thing was happening, like maybe 12 years ago, 15 years ago. And, we would go in a van and come back with not a lot of money. And it was
Mhm.
great, man. It was one of the best musical things I ever did. And I remember Jeff Sipe got a call from the Black Crows and he turned down the gig to keep doing this. And we were making no money, man. And he had
Yeah.
2 kids at the time. He was so into it. And Johnny Neal turned down a Brian Setzer record, master scale, one time to go do this little run we were doing. And I get a call, the next spring, and this singer's offering me full retainer, like, great gig. And I thought, yeah, I'm going to take it. So it wasn't just me. There were other things happening at the time, but that was kind of the nail in the coffin. And I remember my wife was pissed. He's like, why are you doing this? Like, why don't you do your own thing? Like, you keep doing it. And I go, I know. I take these gigs, man. And, but I've been
It's
lucky. I've
interesting
turned
that your
down
wife
everybody.
was your wife was pushing you the other way. That's really cool.
No, she's always been really supportive, and I've I'm lucky that way. But
I've been mine's the same way. I mean, the last few years, the last really 7 years, I've done nothing really but my own thing. But I still I do sessions plenty, but I get called for tours. And a year or so ago, I got called for one that Landau put my name in the hat for, and it was a international artist and it was all overseas touring. But it was like a year of retainer and really, really good pay, to tour basically Italy and Europe for the year. And my wife was the first one to say, you can't do it. You'll have to cancel all the dates you already have planned for yourself and this record that you got to produce this year. And I don't think you should do it. It's not worth it, even though it was a lot of money. So, yeah, I get it.
yeah, well, I think you're smart. I wish I would have started doing my own thing a lot sooner. I mean, it's just this year. I mean, I've always sang. I've never recorded, like put stuff out publicly, but I just sang a song this morning for this producer. I mean, now it's like this is the first year I've had time. That's a lame excuse because I have had time before, but it's hard. I'll tell you one thing that people probably don't realize. Like even touring with John and Daryl Hall, John Oates. I mean, it's cush. Like maybe McCartney might be a little cushier, but it's the
Mm,
travel. They really take care of you. Everything is it's awesome. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better
yeah.
condition. The hotel's a killer. You don't play more than one show a day. It's every other day, sometimes every 2 days. So it's not a grinding pace, is my point. And I get out on the road for a 3 week run. I bring my laptop and my interface and my lyrics or this or whatever you're going to do. Or I have a podcast, so I try to work on that. thing is, man, you get out there, it's a different mindset, as you know. It's hard to be productive, even though you have the time. It's not quality time. Like you don't focus. I don't anyway, and I've talked to other people that are the same. I don't get a lot done when I'm on the road. It takes
Yep.
up more time than just that one gig. You know, you're in that mental headspace traveling, like you're in a different place every 2 days, and then you adjusting. It's like I don't feel like doing anything creative.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that. I struggle trying to do any of that type of creative work, on the downtime in hotel rooms and stuff like that in the middle of tour. It's not easy.
Yeah, but I think you're smart, focusing more on your own thing. I mean, when I lived in New York, I noticed that about New York. Like, it's mostly about doing your own thing in New York. I mean, what I experienced, like, I'd go hear Wayne Krantz all the time, 55 Bar, and I'd talk to him, and somebody introduced this and said, "Yeah, Shane's doing this," and he goes, "Oh, that's cool. So, what about your own thing? Like, you know,
Yeah.
what are you practicing now? Like, what are you working on? How's your tunes? It's all
Yeah.
about what are you doing to your stuff, and
Yeah.
that's one of the things I really loved about that environment there. But I think that's the only way as an artist. Like you're an artist, I'm an artist. Not everybody is. I think some people are completely satisfied being Joe Sideman,
Oh yeah.
but yeah, it's you have to scratch that itch.
Absolutely. Or at least be content with the fact that you're not. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm totally happy playing with Hall and Oates or with any other people I'd play with. There's a reason I do it because I really enjoy it and it's good
Yeah.
music. I mean, if I had to play on session things that I didn't like every day, I have friends in Nashville that do that and they make a lot of money, but man,
Yeah.
it's such a grind. Like I I used to do a lot of that stuff, and after a year of it, it's like I couldn't play anymore. It's weird.
Yeah.
I
I
could only
understand.
think in like 8 bar phrases. There's nothing. It's hard to turn that thing off and then go be. It's different, man. You lose I think you lose a little bit of fire doing
Oh,
that.
you lose a lot of fire. I mean, I'm losing fire just during this pandemic, and I'm playing more guitar than I ever have probably in life since I was a kid at least. But it's not the same. You know what I mean? It's not the same kind of playing.
Yeah,
There's no
yeah.
purpose behind it other than, shedding and bettering myself. That's it. There's no like, yeah. So the fire just, what's the point? I'm not going to stand up and play with dynamics in my living room or out here in the studio by myself,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah.
I feel like this whole interview is taking a dark turn. I hope your listeners aren't.
No,
I
no, no,
don't know if
no,
this
dude.
is like questions you usually ask or whatever, but
Yeah, 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 dude. Let's jump into the 10 questions.
okay.
All right. Number one, when you started learning and playing, what was the first thing that when you figured it out, and got it under your fingers, like, freaked you out so much, like you can't believe you figured this out. And it's like, like it set the hook, like, oh my God, I learned
Well,
this thing I love. What was it?
well, I remember one thing. I mean, this is some real primal shit. But I remember learning, D chord, and going over to my friend's house with my little pig nose amp, and I figured out how you could move it up, and do like make up little songs like that.
Yeah.
And
Dude.
shit, years later, I said, "Damn, Alex Lifeson made a career out of that."
Yeah, that's
Not a career, but there's a few Rush songs that are, that was one of the first things. And then my uncle showed me Stairway to Heaven, which to learn that was learning, like a friggin' Howard Alden chord melody at the time. It was
yeah.
like, I was like, what? Because you don't know like minor shapes or anything. You're just like
Yeah.
memorizing where your fingers go, and it was
Yeah.
completely foreign.
Mm.
So those are two things I remember learning
Yeah.
that just was so fun, man. Just so fun.
I wish I could bottle up the way it felt like every time I had one of those light bulb moments as a kid, or just the joy of figuring out, like the first time you really learn the pentatonic scale and you figure out when you're listening along to a radio, that all you got to do is find what key you're in and you're fine. And you just start playing along with this song. Like that feeling, there was no
Oh, I
going
know.
back after that feeling.
Yeah, I've said that. I've said that too. I said, I wish I could go back to that time, when you get home from school and sit on the edge of your bed and like couldn't wait to plug up and start playing. It was just, it was fun, man.
Yep.
That's what I mean. It hooks you for life once you get hooked.
For life, man. All right. Well, to that end, number two, do you remember the first solo you ever learned note for note, or was that a thing you didn't do? Was there something, a solo that you learned note for note?
I don't remember. I'm trying to think. There must have been something. Like I said, my uncle would teach me a lot of things, and it wasn't necessarily what was on the radio at the time, and it was
Sure.
already kind of old at that point. So, but I do remember him showing me what is that? Show Me the Way, Peter Frampton.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember him
Yeah.
showing me that, and what else? And then I remember learning Stairway to Heaven, the solo, and going, wow, that's so hip, man, landing on that. Wow. Playing over the changes. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't remember a solo per se. Those two probably. I
Nice.
remember licks. Like I remember this lick. When I learned this Eddie Van Halen, doesn't sound clean. All that stuff. When I learned it that day, I was like, wow. It was no YouTube back then, as you remember. It was just like
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I
figure it
can't
out.
imagine. So, I'm a few years younger than you. So while I loved Eddie, I wasn't there like at the when he first came out explosion. So it wasn't like
Well, I
I.
wasn't either. Yeah, I wasn't either. The first, I mean, yeah, I was about seven then when that came,
Okay.
seven, eight.
Yeah.
But when the first Van Halen record I ever heard was Van Halen 2, and
Okay.
it was old. I mean, I heard Van Halen 2 and then Diver Down, and I only had those records for like a year. And then I got Van Halen 1, and I was like, wow. And it was just,
Yeah.
but I remember buying 1984 on cassette when it came out. Yeah.
Hmm. I remember having 1984 just Jump and whatever the B side was, 45. I remember buying a 45 of Jump.
Wow.
One of the first records I ever physically owned, like as a kid. So I was six or yeah, 5 or 6. But I remember getting Jump. But it's funny. I interviewed Andy Timmons recently. He was a good friend, and he's a little older than both of us. And he was talking about no YouTube and all that. And when Eddie came out and the record came out, he didn't understand what tapping was because he'd never seen anybody do it. So when he heard Eruption, he couldn't figure it out. And then he saw a picture in Guitar Player magazine where Eddie was like this with his hand, back
Oh
behind the
yeah.
fretting. And he assumed that's what Eddie was doing to get this weird sound he never heard. And he learned Eruption like this. And he says that's the only way he can play it to this day. But he's like, then he finally saw something and it was like, no, that's not how he plays it.
Yeah, it probably caused a lot of tendon problems back then. Everybody trying to figure out what the hell was going on. So,
I can't imagine, man. I can't. It's like I talked to my dad a little bit, and he's not a guitar player, about what it was like when Jimmy came out, because he remembers, like, even as a non-guitar player, the first time Purple Haze came on the radio, like he lost his mind. He thought like aliens were landing, and like he couldn't believe, he's a rock and roll guy. So I can't imagine for guitar players what that was like. And then again in '78 when Eddie, had to just be crazy to be, like a 15-year-old guitar player at that time when those two things happened.
yeah.
Yeah, crazy. All right, number three. What's the first thing you play every time you pick up a guitar? Do your hands just go somewhere, like autopilot?
There's really no first thing. I mean, what do I play? I don't know. I guess I just bang a chord, see if the amp's on. I don't have like a lick or anything I do, it
Well,
depends,
what
I guess.
about speaking of the amps on, or Like when you flip standby at the gig and you're checking to make sure everything's working. Do you have like a little thing you play that lets you know all
I
this?
probably, I don't know, man. It could be anything. I really don't, honestly. That's a weird question, actually. I don't know. I never thought about that. Probably a chord thing. Probably something out, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I never thought about that.
How about if you go into like a shop to try out a guitar? Do you have any little things you do that, you check to see if the guitar kind of has it or not that lets you know if it does?
I'll play, well, if I'm checking out a guitar, I wouldn't play a lot of licks. I would probably just check out, for dead spots and things like that, chords, play it unamplified, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, probably maybe some sort of progression, some little chord progression. I don't know. I never thought
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
I'll have to come up with something to,
Well, there you go. Well,
to have.
this one too, you probably never thought about. What key, style, song, groove do you hear? Do you hear anything like, when you're driving your car and you're not listening to music, or when you're cooking or something? Do you have anything that always like it comes into mind in your head, like like your home groove or whatever? I'm always hearing a shuffle or something swinging, over the top of a beat. Like, yeah, I hear triplets a lot. I just hear Charlie Parker or BB King or something swinging, or shuffling. Do you have anything like that that just never goes away?
I hear things like second line grooves, New
Yeah.
Orleans second, like faster ones. Um,
Yeah.
I hear that stuff all the time in my head,
Yeah.
like, God, man, I'd probably do 4 records with just that groove. And
Oh
I
yeah.
hear that a lot. Not so much shuffles, but I do love shuffles too.
Yeah. That makes sense to me that you would hear second line. Plus, it's such a great feel. What about like when you first listen to a piece of music that you've never heard before? Do you ever kind of recognize what normally your first inclination is? Are you trying to find maybe what you would play over it, or you're just maybe listening to the melody or harmonizing the melody, or checking the groove? Do you realize like what the first thing you normally grab hold of is, or
Yeah,
what your
that,
first thought?
that one I can answer pretty easily. Groove, absolutely groove. I listen for rhythm. I'm pretty rhythmically oriented. Like that's what I gravitate towards. And then melodic. I mean, if it's a song with lyrics, I'll listen to the sound of the vocal and things like that. I don't generally think in terms of guitar until later.
Mm,
If it was somebody who wanted me to play over something, I would listen to try to focus on groove and chord progression, something like that.
yeah, yeah, interesting. Because it's weird out here. There's so many guys who just do sessions all day long, so it's like they only listen through the lens of what would I play on top of this when they hit the button. You know what I mean? And I mean I do that too to some degree, but it's like then you're not really listening to the music. It's weird.
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah,
yeah. You have to. I think you have to sort of zoom out. Get more of a wider view, pan out
yeah,
from everything, hear things like.
yeah,
I mean, I know definitely you can put on the guitar ears and focus on tone and touch and that kind of thing. But
yeah.
I I try to not listen to music that way. I try to listen to things the total picture. Depending on what I'm doing, I mean, like you said, yeah, if you're a session guy, you kind of have to have those ears though to focus on what are you going to bring to a project.
Yeah. Yeah. It was always fascinating for me because before I moved to LA, the only time I'd ever done sessions or been in the studio was to do my own music. So then when I started getting called out on sessions here, I really had no idea what the job even entailed. So it was like it took me a while to even figure out how to start creating parts on other people's music and making
Yeah,
people happy. It's a weird job. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Cool, man. Number 5. When did you feel like maybe you started to find what your voice might be on the guitar? Was there a moment you remember like, something clicking and you felt like, "Oh, I should do more of this. This sounds more like me maybe."
Probably the first recording I did, which was you were talking about Mark Varney. Is it Mike? No, Mike Varney. Mark was his brother, and he had that label Legato Records, and he had the CD sampler that would come out with all the local hotshot guys at the time. It would have been like mid '90s, and I did a song. He asked me to contribute a song from one, and when I went in the studio, like you said, it wasn't the first time I'd been in the studio, but doing my own music, it was really fun. And I remember just listening to it over and over, going, "Wow, that's actually my tune, my melody." And that's when I started to think maybe I had these little licks that I kind of intentionally put in that didn't sound like anybody else, or at least I thought so at the time. But that was probably the first time.
Yeah. And were you always kind of consciously aware of those things when they were happening, like making choices like to go further down? Oh, I'm going to go that way cuz that sounds more like me, you know.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. The problem I had was, I lived in Nashville for a long time, and I was doing sessions there and doing what we talked about earlier in your interview, and you can't have those kind of things. You have to play sort of part, and or at least, you can have your identity, but it's got to go between here and here. And
Yeah.
so I had to learn how to shut off certain things, and then I'd work on things, and that sort of stifled me, I think. So yeah, I definitely would make decisions like, well, that sounds like a cliche kind of thing. I don't want to do that. I would force myself to literally
Yeah.
play outside of the box. I spent a
Yeah.
lot of time doing that. Like, if I have to play a stock sounding blues solo in a session, I can do it, but it's not really. Spent so much time trying to unlearn that stuff. You know,
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, man. It's
I don't
like
know if that makes sense, but it's.
it
I mean, I
totally
think
makes
people
sense.
have to focus on what makes them unique and go with that. And it doesn't. You don't have to have a lot of chops. I mean,
Nope.
I think Eddie Van Halen had one of my favorite quotes. He was like, "I'd rather, I'd rather bomb with my own stuff than make it with somebody else's." And that was that's why he became Eddie Van Halen, because he wasn't trying to play like anybody else.
Yeah.
All the people that we like, they just did their thing.
Yep.
So,
Yep. 100%. All right. Number 6. What do you consider a big weakness on the guitar? What do you think is your biggest guitar weakness?
oh man, probably my right hand picking. I used to have
Really?
a really great. It's okay. I mean, it's still, it's pretty fast, but I think I botch a lot of notes sometimes. And I would say that would probably be my weakness.
Hmm.
Yeah, probably right hand. I mean, I see like guys now on Instagram, and every note is like just crazy precise, and I go, oh, I want to do that. I used to be able to, I can't. It's not clean like it used to be because I just didn't do it for years and years. And it's such, my technique is such a hybrid of all. It's a mutt of all this stuff. So I
Right.
always consider my right hand as, um, but it's not really my style. It sounds contrived when I play a lot of fast stuff with just my right hand. But I hear guys like, you or I don't know, Joe Bonamassa or Eric Johnson kind of licks, and I want to do that, and I practice it and I can get it. But if I use it, it sounds dumb. you know.
Interesting.
So I consider it a weakness. I don't
Well,
know.
it's weird because for me, I hybrid pick it all. I can't do it like the way Joe does it, or Eric Gales or Eric Johnson. When I sit down with
Yeah,
those guys and they play alternate pick that stuff, it's like, nope, I can't do that. Not
yeah.
happening. Yeah, crazy. Interesting, man. All right. Who would you say is a big influence on your guitar playing that maybe people would be surprised to hear?
Uh, Let me think about that. There's a lot of people, man. Um, I mean, I love Ry Cooder. I don't know if anybody'd be surprised by that.
Right.
Um, Let me think. Let me think. Let me think. Besides the obvious people, I don't know. It's not necessarily guitar players,
Yeah,
piano
maybe a
players.
non-guitar player. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, man, there's a lot of guys, but like I learned so much from playing with great drummers that they were as influential to me, like Zigaboo Modaliste or Art Neville. Being in the Nevilles that at that point when I was in my early mid 20s. I mean, and hearing space, the way Art used to use space, and he taught me a lot about space. And he used to have this thing. He would tell me we'd listen to a tune, and Art would, he'd always go, man, that's cold blooded, bro. It's like this. It's like a washing machine. That was his analogy. And I would say, what do you mean, Art, washing machine? He's like, yeah, it's like this, man. It's got this thing. And that was really a big deal when I play pocket and rhythm now, because what he meant was it's when the washing machine's agitating, it's in between the notes. Like that's what makes it funky, and that's what gives things groove, and it's tension and release. And so cats like that were as influential, if not more, than guitar players to me, man. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
I had the obvious, I mean, Eddie Van Halen, Steve Vai, I loved. Wes Montgomery was a big influence. Ry Cooder, who else? Scott Henderson. I don't know if I mentioned him. There's other people, but those were the big ones for me for a long time. Mike Stern, later Schofield. Um, that's a lot of them right there.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of good stuff there. But yeah, you're right. I mean, even just the guys you play with who don't play guitar, they have as big an impact on your playing as any guitar hero ever will. Like the great drummers, the great keyboard players, and the people there in your formative years too, when you're, really cutting your teeth and learning to be a pro. They make such an impact on where you'll end up down the line, without question.
Right. Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. All right, number 8. Would you rather have on a gig a great guitar and a shitty amp, or vice versa, a great amp and a not so good guitar?
uh, oh man. God, these are crazy questions here, Josh. I think I'd probably rather have probably a not so great guitar and a decent amp.
I'm with you.
I could probably have more experience with that. Actually, I could probably make pretty much anything work. Because at
Yep.
least if you have a shitty guitar, there's a chance you can make it sound kind of funky and good funky.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
amp is hard. I don't know. Amp for me is hard to pull off. I don't know.
What's funny is we fly so often though and have to play bad amps as part of the thing. And so you would think we'd be used to it, but still, I'd always rather have the reverse. It's like the gig is going to be so much better with a decent amp and whatever I plug into it than the other way around.
Oh, so you're the same. You're in agreement.
I'm with you 100%. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
been split about 50-50 between guys. A lot of it, though, are guys rely heavily on specific instruments to even do what they do as a player. So I understand that part of it. Like a specific setup or guitar that lends itself to being able for them to do their thing. But I
Yeah,
get
I
it.
guess I've never been super picky with equipment or guitar. I mean, there's things I like for sure, and but I've never really. I first of all, for years, I didn't even know much about any of that stuff, so I'm pretty easy to please when it comes to that.
Wow. All right. So you're pretty hands off when it comes to the gear.
Yeah, I mean, I remember. Yeah, I don't obsess about things, man. It's kind of boring to me, honestly. I like some of I don't like geek out over pedals and things. I have a lot of nice pedals that I love, but um, I don't know. They kind of, to me, if you're a great player and you have, good hands, I mean, you should be able to get nowadays, man. I mean, I'll give you an example. Okay, this guy wanted to get rid of this guitar. The jam band I was in, I was telling you about, signed this guitar 15 years ago. He's moving to Spain. He's getting rid of everything. He asked me if I wanted the guitar. I said, sure, send it to me. And I saw the picture, Squire or whatever. So I said, well, I'll do something with it, whatever, so you can see where we signed it. So this is a Squire guitar. Man, this guitar is unbelievable. It's like a friend of mine set it up, and well, you know Alan Hines probably. I brought it over to Alan Hines' house. He set it
Yeah.
up for me, and I was like, "Shit, man, this is like a $300 guitar. Like, there's your answer right there. I mean,
Yep.
it's so easy to get greats. You shouldn't have any excuses now. I mean, you can get a tube screamer for $50 and that guitar. I mean, you should be able to do. You should be able to make music with it. You
Yep.
know what I mean?
Yeah,
I just
especially
think
if
people
you're
get so bogged down in that stuff, man, and you just forget about what the point of it all is. You
oh
know?
yeah, it's easy to completely lose your way and feel like that's the most important part of what we do is the gear, and it's like, dude, it's literally the least important part. But yeah, guys run into that problem all the time. Yeah. Oh, all right, cool. So we're on the same page there. Number 9. What keeps you like pushing forward to be a better player? Like, what makes you want to be better tomorrow than today? What keeps you working on new stuff when you're already a working guy, a seasoned professional who's done a lot, and how do you stop from resting on your laurels?
I guess it's putting yourself into situations that are challenging. Just putting it out there, man, like stretching. Um, since I've been out here, last few months I've been recording with great drummer Toss Panos and
Yeah,
this bass player Jorgen Carlson from Government Mule, and
of course. Yeah,
we just like started recording, no plan, no nothing, and a lot of it's vocal stuff. So that's kind of what I've been focused on. More is just writing, and that challenges me like crazy, and it's fun, and I just can't wait to pick up a guitar and just just new things like that are challenging and fun. And
nice.
writing, I'll see some cats on YouTube or whatever, and it'll inspire me too. But mostly, it's like working on my own new things that are challenging for me.
Mm, nice. I mean, yeah. In some ways, you just want to be have some a little bit of motivation. It's like it doesn't take much for us because it's like we just love this stuff so much. We're gonna do it no matter what. So you just
Yeah.
need that little push, to keep you working on new shit. Yeah. Uh, all right. Then number 10, as a follow up to that question, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? Do you have like a little bit of a 5 year plan, or is it just keep kind of going where the wind blows, and see what happens, or is there some specific goals you want to check off?
Uh, I don't really have a 5 year plan, but I could foresee myself doing well. Who knows what the world's going to be like in 5 years with touring, but given the given the circumstances, but let's say things are back to normal. I don't know. I'd like to get more out there doing my own thing, and it's way more interesting to me at this point. Um, so focusing more on my own music. Excuse me, maybe producing a little more, but being
Nice.
selective about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice, man. Well, dude, thank you for doing this. That's the end of the 10 questions. I'm going to put links to all things Shane in the body here. Shane has True Fire courses, which you should buy. They're
Yeah.
ruling. And you should buy his, yeah, you should send me your link. So I post your link in there, the 65% link.
Oh, right. Yeah. Those guys are really nice. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love them, man. True Fire's been, especially during
Right.
this, during the work stoppage, True Fire's been a godsend for me. But
Yeah. How many courses have you done with them?
I've done well. I had only 2, but I just went there recently and shot 2 new ones. So I've got 2 new ones coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Great.
was weird flying, and I've only flown a couple times during this pandemic for some work things, and it's been weird. But dude, thank you
I actually
for
like
doing this,
it.
man.
It's the easiest time to fly, man. I just went to New York and it was just a breeze. There's like nobody on the plane.
Yeah,
I mean, I took a COVID test when I landed and it was like, it was easy. I don't know. I'm kind of
nice.
spoiled. No traffic here in LA. Nobody in the airport.
Oh yeah, the traffic thing here. I mean, it's kind of getting back to normal now, but for months here, it was just like a revelation. Like
Yeah.
never seen it like this ever. It was just great. Yeah, yeah, Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude,
No.
thank you for doing this, man. I greatly appreciate you taking the time out of your day. And for the rulers, we're going to come back maybe and do the turn two. But if you're not a ruler, please hit join or at least subscribe to the channel. It's greatly appreciated, and it will keep me making content. So, dude, thank you so much, man.
Yeah, you're welcome, Josh. Thanks for asking, man.
You got it, man. All
A
right,
lot of
rulers,
fun.
we'll be back in a second. Thanks, dude.